Hi, everybody. Welcome to Monday on TLD Cast. I'm your host today, Cara North, and I have two very interesting gentlemen joining me today to talk about school. And when we talk about school, we're going to be talking about, do you need a degree for L&D? And yes, I rhymed, so I just trying to be cool. If this is your first time on TLD Cast, welcome. We're so glad that you're here. We're the training, learning, and development community. We meet here about twice a week. And if you're not familiar with us, we do webinars, or cast, I guess would probably be the better word. I like to say we're a little bit more cooler than webinars because we really want to get your input as we're going through today's topic. If you haven't had a chance, you can actually check us out on our website and check out past episodes on tldcast.us. Let me put that link here in the chat. And then when we're not here live, you can actually connect with us. We have a Slack page. So we'd love for you to join the conversation on that, get to know people here in the community, and you connect with us there at tldchat.us. So tldc.us gets you to the website, and tldchat.us gets you to the Slack page. So without further ado, we have a lot to discuss. I do want to make kind of this blanket statement before we get started that these are definitely opinions that you're going to be hearing about today, and I'll bring Chad back in here in just a moment. They're opinions, so just know that we have our opinions, you may have your opinions, and we just want this to be a very civil and open and welcoming conversation about the topic. So we don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. We don't want anybody raging out of here. This is just a very civil conversation about a topic I think a lot of people are curious about. So with that, I will want to introduce panelist number one today, and he was the one that was on the promo for today, Chad Smith. And Chad, if you want to tell everybody a little bit about you and how you got into learning and development.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Car. Well, I started off, I earned a bachelor's degree in education from the University of Arkansas. After that, I started teaching high school. Wasn't enough for me, so I went and got my master's degree from Ohio University, the Bobcats, not to be confused with the Ohio State University. And when I went there, I got my master's in education. While I was doing that, I was working as a high school teacher at the same time. I was starting to delve into curriculum and building curriculum, becoming the expert in curriculum at this time by just taking as many curriculum opportunities that I could to build and outline different types of curriculum. And I was fortunate that I was able to work with some of the county offices to build some of the newer curriculum that was being passed down at the time. So I was really able to start building out, learning objectives and things like that very early in my teaching career. Then I went to the University of West Florida, where I earned a specialist degree in education. For those of you that aren't sure exactly what a specialist degree in education is, that is a terminal degree in education that is mainly used in the corporate environment. So whenever a person has a terminal degree in the corporate environment, they don't necessarily need to know how to do all the research and everything that goes into getting a doctoral degree. So they'll get a specialist degree, and that's what I got there. I got that in instructional design and assessment design. And it was very heavily based in theory, which was really cool. I also went on to earn my doctoral degree in instructional design and assessment design at the University of West Florida, which I haven't quite done yet. I'm on the, I got the first 3 chapters of my dissertation written. I'm on the last 2 chapters now, so I'm in a home stretch of it. I've went through everything that I need to go through to make sure that I'm there. So right now I'm a specialist in education, working towards my EDD in education.
Very cool. And that's something that we share, is that we're both in Ph.D. EDD program. So I did try to share while you were going through the chat, Chad, about your different degrees, so that way everybody is kind of on the same page. And I have to just give a quick shout out. So how small the world is. So Chad did his master's at Ohio University. I think that was probably before I actually lived in Ohio. But Chad and I actually have a mutual friend. One of my friends from undergrad, Chad met at his time, I think, at University of Arkansas. And it's just so small how the world is. So we had a mutual friend from that. super excited that Chad's here today to bring his talent and expertise to this really important topic. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Richard Harrell, who I just met on Friday. And just key little thing, if you ever want to get on a TLD cast with me, comment on LinkedIn, I'll bring you in. That's how I met Richard. He had some really great things to share. And so I said, why don't you come on in and join us today? So Richard, do you want to introduce yourself and share a little bit how you got into the learning space?
Yeah, absolutely. You guys can hear me, right? Excellent. Good deal.
Yeah.
Hey, guys. Good morning, good afternoon, depending where you guys are at in the world. My name is Richard Harrell. I go by Rick, a little bit less professional, I guess. But yeah, so Cara, so she actually introduced me to this platform so I can get on here and speak with everyone today. I am unfortunately not this time a PhD holder or going after it. However, next year I'm looking at doing that, though. But a little bit about me, though. I've been in telecommunications for about a decade right now. I got my AAS from Anne Arundel Community College back home in Baltimore. I got a undergrad from University of Maryland in graphic communications, and then I'm finishing up my master's at Arizona State as of right now in educational technology. I think it's really interesting. We have different experiences and different things that we go through that kind of get us to our spot where we're at. So I got into learning and development when I was at the University of Maryland. I love speaking, I love talking, and I found a position working for Sprint as a instructional designer slash facilitator. So I spent a couple of years with them, completing in-classroom training, facilitating new hires, teaching advanced communication theory, right, to sales teams, nonverbal body language, paralinguistics. It was really cool because I got to then begin to go ahead and design my own stuff that I was then using in the classrooms to go help sales and district teams sell and just become more effective. Personally, L&D is very close to me. I think that we all become better at communication, which means that we become better at sharing ideas, which means more effective transfer of ideas and just notions of thought. So I'm really excited to be here today speaking to everyone and to learn as well, because still I am a learner.
Absolutely. I'll say it till the day I die. Mike Taylor said probably the best thing I've ever heard about that if you're in this field, you're a professional learner. So always love to share that because that's something that he shared with me. So great. So we got intros out of the way. So let's start about just what to look for in a learning development program. So I want to, I'll start with Chad on this one. What do you think some of the factors were that you considered personally when you were selecting a program to go into? What were some of those factors that really were important to you?
Absolutely. Thank you. The most important thing for me was that it was at an accredited school that was not necessarily prestigious, but that it was a school that was considered to be a good school. For me, it needed to be a state college. That's why I wound up going to the University of West Florida. I looked at a lot of different programs at a lot of different colleges. There was a lot of private colleges for instructional design and instructional technology, but I really wanted to focus on a state school. So I went to the University of West Florida. And also, another thing about the University of West Florida, the reason I chose that school over the Florida State University, which also has a very good program, was that it actually had some better accolades as far as their instructional design program goes and the things they've done. They've done a lot of good things within the community to be able to help out those things that I sought after. I also had a really good articulation agreement from the county that I was teaching in at the time. So being able to use that articulation agreement, I was able to keep my student loans very low, and I think that was very, very helpful for me. Being somebody that was working, I wanted something that I could do whenever I wanted to do it. And so it needed to be something that was going to be a internet-based, distance education program. So that was the third reason that I chose it, because I was very busy at the time. I was teaching, I was coaching football, and then I'd also starting to get into like building some different coursework and stuff like that on the side. So I was just a really, really busy guy at the time, and I really needed something that was going to be flexible for me. So flexibility was a really important part of it.
Great tips, totally. And if I may, Rick, what were kind of the factors for you for your particular program?
I feel like Chad was literally just like reading my mind. One of the very first things is being a little bit younger at the time and wanting to just obtain, just through my education, these different degrees. Flexibility was key. It was having the ability to work, because at the time I was working within the retail channel, and retail isn't always forgiving when it comes to having time off and whenever it has to travel to and from the office or travel to and from school. So having this online flexibility option, and ironically enough, being in the corporate world for so long, blended in distant as just education is just becoming massive. Companies don't want to have to go out and spend a lot of finance on travel and hotels and training rooms and things like that. So having the mentality of that's what I want to do, but that's also the pool I want to swim in, was kind of a deciding factor for the actual distance education just to occur. Second thing was, just like Chad said, the accredited school. I want to go to a state university. I'm not really Ivy League at all, but I feel like I have the ability, though, to definitely go where I want to go in life. And I think bottom line, just having strict time management skills mixed with that flexibility. I mean, those two things alone, they go hand in hand. So state accreditation and flexibility, I think, were my two.
Absolutely. I think those are great as well. And if I may, I'm going to share kind of mine as well, because I don't know if I also shared, but if you know me, you probably know I'm also a PhD student in learning technologies here at the Ohio State University. And for me, when I selected a program, I selected an employer because they have tuition reimbursement. So if you are selected and get accepted to the programs, they pay 100% of your tuition. So I have a saying, if it's free, it's for me. So that's why I decided when I moved to Columbus to work at the Ohio State University, because when I was working at Amazon, I didn't have a degree in learning and development. So I was able to come here, start working at Ohio State, get my master's, and then I said, hey, do you guys pay for your PhD? And they're like, yeah, if you can get in the program. Challenge accepted, my friends. I will get into that program. So that's literally was my criteria, that it was free. So that's why I'm in the PhD program. But with that being said, I'm going to transition into maybe some things you wish you would have thought of before you hopped into the program. And for me, if I may, I'm just going to share one thing that I wish I would have checked a little bit better in my program is basically learning more about the faculty and kind of their interest. One thing that you find, especially in higher education, is a lot of schools that you go to, if they are tenured faculty, a lot of times because of just the crazy stuff with being a faculty member, at least in the United States, a lot of times their only job has been in higher education. So they are pushed to research, they're pushed to publish. But one thing I wish I would have dug a little bit deeper is to know kind of their clinical chops. Like, can they actually develop instructional design? Have they ever been an instructional designer? Can they use Captivate, Storyline, Lectora, whatever your tool of choices? Can they use those? Can they teach you how to use those? Or if they can't, are there people that come in to your program that helps teach those particular tools, methodologies, etc.? Are they kind of up with the times, or are they still kind of back doing the publishing and that kind of stuff? Because one thing that is especially kind of a peeve of mine is having an online class and then seeing it be ugly and going through and looking at it like, oh my gosh, I would change this, and this, and this makes me a nervous wreck. So really, again, researching kind of who are those people behind the faces behind that program, how are they going to help you? How are they going to prepare you for your future career path? Because I am a PhD student that is not interested in academia. That changed within the last year, but after kind of being part of the higher ed machine for a while, I don't want to be part of it anymore. So that's just my 2 cents with that. So Rick, I'll toss it over to you. What are some considerations that you wish you would have thought of in your particular program?
Ooh, good question. Well, I think one thing that you said was very interesting was that so earlier, that we're all just continuous learners, and everyone learns and everyone shows their learning in different ways and different measures. So I think when you think about the program that you're entering into, it's kind of like a classroom. I mean, you can have the very best content in the world. You got the very best tools, the best technology. But if the individuals don't know how to effectively use it or utilize it or implement it or teach it or any of the other words I can think of that would describe how to show it off, then it's kind of dead on arrival, unfortunately. It's like a football team that practices during the game. That it's not beneficial to anybody. That's the first thing. So I think maybe thinking about some like interpersonal questions that you may want to ask yourself before you just jump into this, well, one, huge investment of money. I mean, it's a very big investment. So you just don't want to hop into something and go, yeah, because I want the title. No. What interests you in the topic? What are your goals holistically, not just within the program, but maybe after the fact? And then I also think, what do you actually want to get out of the program? Like, what's beneficial to you? Where does it get you at in life? Then I think that you really have to think about, I think, like your lifestyle, because when you're in a program like this, it's a lot of time that you're investing. It's a lot of patience. You like going out, having fun on the weekends, blah, 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 whatever. You may have to kind of dial that back a little bit because this takes up a lot of the time. And I think the second thing, like I've already said, was consider the finance part of it though, too, because I mean, again, you're not just throwing a couple $1,000s. This is a really nice car or a down payment on a very nice house. So I think when you research these programs, you have to think about these things and also ask friends, ask family who've already attended these, because from what I've seen personally, these are continuous in terms of actual learning and development. Some of the classes I've had, they've been amazing. Other classes, I've kind of had to scratch my head a little bit and go, I think I would have done A, B, and C a lot better than what they did. And here's why.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's really kind of difficult, I think, to swallow when you kind of, again, the traditional American, at least education system is they're the expert and you're the student. But then when you go through and kind of map that. But real quick, before I turn it over to Chad, I want to touch on a point that you made about the time investment, and I'm sure Chad's going to talk about this as well, because I know Chad has a family. But for me, I'm a proud cat mom, and I am very lucky to have a super supportive spouse. But I do think that this journey is a selfish journey. You take a lot of time away from your loved ones doing this. I mean, every weekend, every Sunday, I'm gone working on stuff. And I know in the evenings I'm working on stuff. So having that conversation, I think, is super, super critical with your partner or your loved ones in your lives, just because it does take up so much time. And a lot of people ask me, how do you do everything that you do? I always give credit to my spouse, because if it wasn't for him supporting me, making sure that I have food in my belly and clean clothes every week, I don't think I could do it. So shout out to you, Matthew North, if you're watching this or listening, which I know you're not. But again, I just think it's really important to have those conversations when you decide to do this. So Chad, what about you? What are some of the things that you kind of wish you would have considered?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Rick, you really hit the nail on the head with everything you said there, and I agree with you, Cara. I think the time commitment is something that you really need to say. Do you have the time to be able to do this? I think I just carved out the time, whether I had it or not, because it's something that I wanted to do. It was a personal journey that I needed to take as a first year college graduate out of my family. I wanted my children to know that if they wanted to pursue a doctoral degree, that they could do. Anybody could do it. And honestly, if I can do it, really anybody can. I mean, straight out of high school, I was working with my dad as a sheetrock finisher and a painter. I did that for a few years before, was taking the plunge and going to college and getting where I am now. So as far as like having a supportive family, absolutely. If my wife didn't support me and allow me to go into my office and lock myself in the room for 2 to 3 hours a night, every single night, then I wouldn't be able to make it through this journey. But also, I also make sure I have my Saturdays and my Sundays for my children, and that I put that time aside. A lot of times I'll wake up early in the morning and I'll work at 5, 6 o'clock in the morning on things before everybody else in the house wakes up, and wait on them to wake up. So you can find those places where you can do it and you can be successful with it without affecting your family. But it takes creativity, and you have to really you got to really want it. If you don't want it, you're never going to get through it. But I think it would be like that with any doctoral program, honestly. Um, as far as, some of the things I wish I considered before I got into it, I think the major thing for you to consider is, what do you want to do? Do you want to be an instructional technologist, or do you want to be an instructional designer? Because those are two different fields. Where I work at, we have instructional designers that build out the design and pass it on to the instructional technologist, and the instructional technologist then build out that design that the instructional designer built. I'm lucky because I'm one of the only ones here where I work that actually takes things from conception all the way out, because I wanted to be able to do everything so I could market myself and have a broad set of skills, kind of a jack of all trades. But that's really hard to find, and you don't see that a lot within the field. So if you want to be an instructional designer, if you want to work in Captivate, if you want to do things with HTML5 and all that kind of cool stuff, do I think you necessarily need to go to college to do that? Do you need a degree in instructional design to do that? Well, probably not. No, you can probably start building things out in Captivate and Storyline, and building a portfolio and showing people what you can do. And you can go and you can get that job without having that theoretical background, where you work alongside an instructional designer that builds all the theoretical things for you, and then you put the artistic spin on it. And there's a lot of jobs out there like that. There's also a lot of jobs that want you to be able to do everything. They want you to have everything in your pocket, be able to be the instructional designer and be the instructional technologist. And, that's kind of why I wanted to branch out and make sure that I could do technology and design. If you want to be that person that knows everything, I think you have to get some sort of a degree in instructional design, at least a master's degree in instructional design, or a specialist degree in instructional design, if you really want to be honed in on theory and have a really solid foundation on theory. A lot of the master's degrees I've found will actually work you through theory, and they'll work you through trying to use the products. And it doesn't necessarily blend well, because theory takes so much time to have that solidified in such a way where you don't have to think about, theory to interject it into your product. It just comes naturally to you because you've done it so many times over and over and over again. And that's where getting a specialist degree, getting a doctoral degree really comes in handy. So if you want to be an instructional designer, I think that's the route you go. I think you go towards that instructional design degree. If you want to be an instructional technologist, you want to work with the tools, and you want to do HTML5, you want to do cool things like that, maybe a certificate might work out for you. I'm not really fond of those because I've not met very many people with those, but I have met a lot of people with master's degrees that got a little bit of theory and a little bit of using the tools, and then they went out and used it. But you could be an instructional technologist, and I know a lot of them that degree in education, bachelor's degree, and then they learned to use the tools. They built that portfolio, and they moved in that direction. So I think you really have to think about exactly what you want to do, and does it make sense for your future projections? Because I wouldn't tell somebody that wants to be an instructional technologist go the instructional design route, but I would tell somebody that wants to be an instructional designer, you need to go get that master's or that specialist degree, because you have to have that theory to be able to solidify your work. And that way, if you go to work for like yourself, Cara, where you're at a higher education institution, or like myself, where you're at a community college, you have to be able to work with professors who have PhDs, and you have to be able to say to those professors, here's why you should do these things. This is the most effective method of creating teaching, and they will take you more seriously if you too have that terminal degree in educational theory.
Absolutely. And I will try to tone down my snark level on that, Chad, because you are dropping some knowledge nuggets left and right that absolutely true. But even if you have that PhD, faculty do what faculty want to do a lot of times. But with that being said, I think this transitions into a nice question that we have from the chat that I posted. But one thing I found very interesting about being an instructional designer in higher ed is a lot of the positions do actually require a PhD. And that absolutely blew my mind when I saw that. And that's not why I'm getting a PhD. I'm getting a PhD because I love to learn. And again, they said it was free, and I said, let's do this thing, which maybe is probably not the best reason to get a PhD, but you live and learn. But a question that we got a couple of times here in the chat is about the certificate programs versus the master's degree. So Chad, you talked a little bit about that before, but Rick, if you have any thoughts on that, or Chad, you want to clarify anything, it looks like Margie and Lori were both interested in kind of knowing the difference between the two, the certificate program versus that master's degree.
I can touch on it a little bit more. I think I would suggest that if you're going to get a certificate, that you look at where you're getting that certificate from, and you make sure that it's coming from an institution that is highly recommended by other instructional designers. You talk to people that's been through that program, that has had that certificate, and you see what projection they've had. Go on LinkedIn and find people who've graduated from that program on LinkedIn, and see where has that certificate taken them. And that way, don't judge the value of the certificate by what that school tells you, because they're always going to tell you things that may or may not be 100% correct. That their statistics will be right, but they'll be giving it to you in a way that makes it look the best it can possibly look. So look at what other graduates have done with those certificates and decide whether you want to have those certificates from that. I saw somebody asked in the chat if corporate L&D and academia L&D is the same thing, and I think that they do vary. I am lucky because I do work at a community college, and I also have a business on the side where I do corporate work, and I work with a lot of different organizations and sales teams and things like that. And essentially the learning theory is exactly the same. Nothing changes as far as the learning theory goes. Whether you want to use micro learning or any of these other types of learning, nothing changes. Whether you're using Captivate or anything like that, nothing changes there. Essentially, the biggest difference is what you're teaching and how you're teaching that. And what I mean by that is you have to, do needs analysis and take into account exactly, what's going on with these different companies so that you can build the learning out so that it is solidified for that company. Whereas in education, you don't have to have as much needs analysis after you've been there for a while, because this our courses run this many weeks. I have to have it done by this time. I can put it in Blackboard or whatever your learning management system is. That needs analysis piece isn't as huge as it is in the corporate environment. So while everything is the same, there are differences, but it's not that big of a difference. It's not like huge differences that you would normally see. I think the biggest thing, like I said, is needs analysis in that case.
It's like screaming on the side, on the nose, on the nose. Took the words right out of my mouth. Rick, do you have any thing to add on that about the certificate versus the master's?
In terms of that, not necessarily, because I don't have that much experience with the certificate. But the very last comment, what we were just talking about there, I work with instructional designers, the ITs, the engineers of organizations, because my organization, Learning Pool, we implement training and L&D solutions from an ecosystem perspective. And I talk to these individuals every single day. And the biggest thing I've seen whenever I talk to designers or creators, developers from the education side versus the corporate side is, of course, goals. And their goals are so dramatically different from what they want to achieve, what they want to obtain, what they want to attain. And obviously, it changes the direction of their decisions. And it's really funny because culture plays such a big piece in a lot of the conversations that I have around L&D, especially with the corporate individuals, because bottom line, finance. However, from the education side, it's really about organic growth and growing and learning. And you start to see the type of data that they want to collect, and you start to see the changes that they make in the business, and timescales are all skewed. And there's a dramatic change between the conversations between these two. I think out of both, I really like to see the insight of the corporate individuals, because bottom line, they're all about finance. And to me, that's really interesting. And how can we increase cash flow? How can we decrease knowledge, forgetfulness, or the inability just to hold it? So I like having those conversations, just seeing where they go.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that was a really good point. And Jack actually reminded me, we had a conversation this week. Jack came down and was part of our Central Ohio ATD Learning Technologies and Design Day, say that 5 times fast, conference. And one thing that I think, because I have had corporate and higher ed experience, is I think that they are certainly a little bit different, but as you both point out, I mean, it is kind of the same goal. And one thing in corporate I always felt like was, we were a money taker, not a money maker. I mean, you were taking people out of production to go through a different course and that kind of thing. But one thing about higher ed, at least in my experience, is if we move a course online, it's a money maker. So a lot of the ways the revenues for the colleges are made is butts and seats. So the best way to get more students to take classes, have it online. So I look at myself as a money maker, which is a little bit different than a money taker. But through my corporate experience, I think one thing I took away from that as an instructional designer is, what's the point? Like, what are they going to get out of it? How are they going to improve their performance? So one thing that I try to do with the faculty that I work with, I support a lot of different courses here at the college. So especially fashion courses, that's kind of like the main one that I support at this point. And so I always ask, these 500 kids that are taking this course, it's a general education requirement. Not all 500 of them are going to go in the fashion sector. So I've really challenged faculty, what are some transferable skills that students can get out of this course to be a better veterinarian, lawyer, doctor, fashion design, whatever they decide to do? Like, what can they take out of your course that they took their freshman, sophomore year and become a better professional? So that's been something that I've taken from that aspect. But in the higher ed space, one thing that I've kind of beefed up my capability toward that I think the corporate environment would benefit from is what's called alignment mapping. So making sure that with every learning objective, there's activities and assessments that map everything back. Like, going into that much of a deep dive analysis is something that you definitely learn in the theories part of your master's or PhD. And I think that corporate environments could certainly benefit from that because, again, I fell into this. I didn't have a formal education when I was building training for Kendall. So I had no idea what I was doing, but I had supportive people around me, so I appreciate that. But long story short, just wanted to kind of share at least my experiences of being on both sides of the coin, because I think that is a little bit unique having both. I want to go ahead and hop into another question real quick, and then we'll kind of go back to our informal list. So this one was from SJ about what one would study to be a learning experience designer. And Chad, I know you have strong feelings on this, so I'm going to let you start.
So let me repeat the question. What one would study to be a excellent instructional designer? Is that correct?
Oh, sorry, a learning experience designer.
Learning experience designer. Yeah. So learning experience designer is going to be the same thing as an instructional designer. You have to know theory because that is the heart of learning experience. As a learning experience designer, you're also going to work a lot with technology. A lot of times, you'll find jobs that are called learning technologist, and it's along the same lines of a learning experience designer, where you're building out the various designs for the technologists to build out that are all about how that learner is going to experience it. So you would use programs like Adobe XD, things like that, to make sure that your functionality is correct before you pass things off to the developer. So you would have to really know the product very well. A lot of times, unfortunately, companies have decided they don't want to hire a designer and a developer, and they just hire one person to do everything. So you have to be able to fill that role also. You have to be able to use Adobe Captivate or Storyline, depending on what they want you to build in. You have to know those products as well. So as far as a learning experience designer, the theory first. Once you know the theory, then start working with the tools, because the tools are kind of secondary to the theory. Anybody can pick the tools up and start building things out in the tools. But if it's not built out in a theoretically sound manner, if you're not using, say, andragogy for adults and pedagogy for children, then you're not providing the learning experience that somebody is going to need to be successful as a student or a learner going through your course. So make sure that you have the theory foundation first, then you move into the tools.
Man, I'm gonna start calling you Yoda, Chad. I mean, you're just like dropping them left and right, my friend. Rick, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I've got a couple minutes worth of experience I want to chat about. So yeah, absolutely. Number one theory. I think that when you have to think about what you're doing, it's not just does it look cool, does it look pretty, but why am I doing it? Seriously, why am I taking the time to understand theory? What does it do for my learners? What does it do for me as the ID or as the IT? What does it do for the business? What does it do for the college? Why am I doing this? And I think that when you think about that, you can really tap into some of those psychological phenomenon that is learning, that is transfer, that is development. Understanding why certain types of content impacts short-term memory versus long-term memory. How do you gauge that? Where does the gap analysis come in the future to actually see, was learning achieved temporarily or was it achieved permanently? In terms of tools, I mean, tools are really funny. I went to ATD in DC earlier in the year. I'm going to DevLearn. And there's a lot of cool stuff there. I'm not sure who went, but when you walk in, it feels honestly kind of overwhelming because you're like, what do I even look at first? Because there's like thousands of booths in this place. What do I need? Do I need it all? Well, what happens if I only need pieces of it? You have to really start to think what you want to achieve from your theory. You have to think, how am I going to be creating the content? What kind of authoring tools am I using? Rise 360, Storyline, Adapt. Adapt is something that my organization currently uses right now. And then you've got all these smaller ones along the way that slowly build up. And then you're like, okay, well, where am I going to host it at? Am I going to have to go buy an LMS, learning management system? Am I going to use a free one? Maybe I want to use maybe like an LXP. If you guys aren't familiar, learning experience platforms are becoming very big because learning's more about experiences versus just compliance training. But you can have compliance and experience though, so not to get those two confused. But then another question arises, well, what kind of tool do I want to use then to go measure the efficacy of my learning? Do I want to have a learning record store that really just granularly collects data? Do I want to have SCORM versus XAPI compliance in terms of training? Like, what do I want here? So I think that when you really start to think about those two things, theory and tools, you really get into some really complex conversations that's not just cost, just aware of cost of how much the tool is, but what does it do for me though? And I think that when you think about it like that, it becomes a little bit more difficult than just, yes, I'll take two of those.
Great tips. And one other thing I would add is my title is Senior Learning Experience Designer at Ohio State, and I had to fight to kind of get that title. But I like to look at myself as a buster of sludge. I like to think of what we do as more of a nudge versus a sludge. And there's a lot of crazy systems I've seen. I think SJ has given some examples here in the chat about her compliance training. Here at the university, our different LMSs are behind two-factor authentications. And then you have to have 8-9 clicks just to get into a training. I definitely think that is sludge. I think there's better ways of doing it. I mean, how are you supposed to get people excited? Why should it take 2 to 3 minutes to get into stuff that they want? It's almost more of a punishment than something good. So that's kind of like my little 2 cents about it. Fight the sludge. So with that, I'm going to thank you, Kim. I appreciate that. If you're going to DevLearn, we have a little side chat here. Drop it in the chat if you're going to DevLearn, because we'd love to see you there. Rick will be there. I'll be there. Tracy will be there. Jack will be there if Jack's still with us. So love to have a quick little meet up there. All right. So let's talk about just kind of the day-to-day of being a student in a program. I want it to be real. I want people to kind of know exactly what to expect. I do think there's kind of this romantic vision of, oh, I'm a student again, and oh, I'm bettering myself. And we know the real, right? So Chad, I'll start with you. Give us kind of a sense of like the real day-to-day. You've talked a little bit about time management, getting up early, that kind of stuff. I mean, give it to us straight. Like, what is it actually like being a student?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the question. It's very difficult. I remember when I got my bachelor's degree, and I said I'm going to go get my master's. One thing I learned, if anybody's thinking about getting their master's and you're worried about it, if you did well in your bachelor's degree, you're going to knock it out of the park on your master's. It's just easier. It really is. You're learning something that you want to learn. You're focusing on something, and you're not going days like you do with an undergraduate degree, and it's much, much easier than it is another degree. And I think that is because of the interest and the motivation behind getting a master's degree. But it's a lot of work. It's a ton of work, and you go through almost a hazing process by the professors, I feel like, to kind of introduce you into the world of academia. You don't have any clue how to do APA formatting. You don't have any clue on formatting or writing or anything. You think you do. You think you spend all this time in your bachelor degree and you understand writing, but you don't. You're just clueless on writing. And your first couple courses is just them beating you up about how horrible you are as a writer and helping you become a better writer. And then you do start to become a better writer. So it's a lot of trips to the college library. It's a lot of, studying and getting better at something that you thought you was already good at, which is kind of disheartening at first. But it's also balanced by stuff that you want to learn and stuff that you're very, very, very interested in, and really, really neat stuff. So I wouldn't let that dishearten you or keep you from going into it. I would let that be a motivator to push you into a master's degree. Also, I would say when you go to get your master's degree, if you're working like I was at the same time, you're going to have to spend a lot of time working on schoolwork as well as your work. So as a classroom teacher, and I'd been teaching for 3 years, whenever I went back to get my master's degree, I would spend my lunch break writing. I would come home from school. I would grade papers until about 8 o'clock. I would go and lock myself into my room after grading papers, and then I would write and study more until about 11, 12 o'clock at night. I would go to sleep, have to get up at 6 o'clock, get my shower, get out the door by 7, and be at school by 7:30. I was lucky enough to live close enough to school I could do that. So if you have any type of commute, then you would have to add that into it also. It is a ton of work. Of course, you have your weekends and everything. Generally, when you take an online course, things are due at Sunday at 12 o'clock at night, which is awesome. But there's also some professors out there who are kind of demonic about it and make things due on Fridays or Saturday mornings. There's these weird times that make no sense at all, because that's how it was when they went to school. They feel like it should be like that. So it throws you off of your loop. Once you get into, you got to, so that you can have your stuff done by Friday, it's okay, but it takes some learning to figure that out. So you have all these little hiccups along the way that you have to deal with. The biggest hurdle that you'll overcome is just finding the enthusiasm to keep yourself going, because there'll come a time when you just want to stop and quit and not do it anymore. And you got to dig deep and you got to push yourself and you got to keep going. And, hopefully you have the friends and a support system that can help you with that. And you can just push yourself and will yourself forward, because really what it takes is the ability to will yourself forward at that point. And then all of a sudden you hit the tail end and you can start seeing the closing of it. You can start seeing your last few classes. You're like, I almost got this specialist degree done, almost got this master's degree done. So you get super excited, and you knock it out, and then you're walking across the stage, you got the feelings of euphoria. Then you get your first job, and you realize they didn't teach you anything about technology whatsoever, that all they taught you about was theory. And you are excellent at theory, but you have no idea how to use the build. So now you have to start going to school again to actually do the job while you're on the job. And then you can't get out of that, because if you don't, you'll fail at your job. And that's why you went and did all that school. So
you just keep it real, Chad. You're just keeping it real, totally. So I will just kind of echo before I turn it over to Rick about the importance of having a good crew around you. If it were not for Jaren Korkmaz, who I think actually just joined us, I would not still be in the program. I actually just had a major kind of panic attack this morning when I came to work. I looked at my calendar, looked at everything due this week, and I'm like, how am I going to get everything done? Because I have to go to a conference in Cincinnati on Friday. I'm like, this is going to be the stress train. Hop aboard, everybody. And Jaren was just like, you got this. Just do a little bit of time, get it. So having that core people around you, I think, is pivotal to helping you succeed. And it might not always be your advisor, and it might not always be your faculty member. I mean, it's so important to make those peer connections and get those people to back you up. At least that's been certainly the key to my success. What about you, Rick? What's a typical day-to-day like for you? You're almost done, right?
Oh my goodness, what's it like? I have to say that I'm pretty happy. I made my last payment on my master's last month. I paid off, yeah, I know, right? Paid off my associates, my bachelor's, and my master's in full because I've been very cautious about the money I make and how I invest it. So I turn 30 next month, so I'm happy to say by 29, no student debt. So if you go ahead and go get the chance, do it. It feels amazing. I bought myself an ice cream cone. Yeah, I was really excited. I think with school, like remember, when I was at AT&T, I was doing B2B, and during my lunch periods, an hour every single day, I would go into my area of the building and I would go do work. I would go read books, or I would complete my activities, or I would submit my discussion for the week. And that was just my life for a couple of years there, just lunchtimes, not really eating a whole lot, just focusing on that. I got a lot better at that. It's very demanding. And like Cara, like you said, it's very demanding on your family, on your spouse, on your loved ones. And I think most importantly, it's probably most demanding on yourself. There's a lot of discipline that goes into it. Like for me, I was taking my work with me, my schoolwork on vacations. I was taking it on the airplane. I was taking the dorm family trips sometimes. And it was just very frustrating. But once you figure out that I can't waste my time, I have to invest it wisely, it does become a lot more manageable after a while. And that was something I learned, was time management. Because my team, because we're meeting in different time zones, submission dates are all over the place. And I think I had to become a very responsible learner, meaning don't complete the activity. Don't read the book for compliance. Have you done it? Check, I've done it. No, compliance training is not effective in all regards. But what are you getting from this study? What are you getting from the book? And I think when I thought about that, I became a much more responsible learner. And I think bottom line, just keeping that motivation up. It's very easy to become demotivated, especially in this space, depending if you're physically at the old brick and mortar college, if you're in blended learning, if you're all just asynchronous remote. Bottom line, prove to those who say that you can't, that you can. And I think that once you do that, you're going to be A-okay.
Great tips. Proven. You have something to prove. So I think that's always great if you push yourself, right? I want to get to, we have about 10 minutes left, give or take. Want to go ahead and hit these last few questions, kind of speed round. The first one's from Margie. I think it's a great question. I don't know of one, but do either of you know of a list, like a website with available programs? She hasn't had any luck finding one, like one good list to show all the different programs. Do either of you have any insights into that one?
Unfortunately, I do not. I will tell you, Google is a very big place. Bing is a very big place. Yahoo is a very big place. And the scary thing is that having millions of options is not always right. Those top reviews saying like this, and this, hey, my opinion, go explore. Go be one of those responsible searchers. The first 5 or 6 things in Google isn't always the right thing. So I would really take it back to home and think interpersonally, well, what do I want to do? What do I want to learn about? Do I like it because of the name, of the title? Is it something I'm actually passionate about? It can be very easy to get lost in the chaos that are lists of this stuff. So I would think maybe take it back to home, think about what you're looking at, maybe going on YouTube, maybe reviewing some videos that people have made about the subject. Social networking sites. I'm a huge Redditor. Not sure if you guys are on Reddit. I love Reddit. That's where I get a lot of my information. See, Cara gets it. But I learn a ton about what I do right now from crowdsourcing, and I like Reddit for that. I think it gives me a good platform.
Yeah, me too. I love Reddit. It looks like, I hope I pronounced your name right, Trika. Thank you for that. So ATD actually does have a directory there, so good to know ATD is doing something. Chad, do you have any other thoughts on that one?
Yeah, create an Excel spreadsheet and list it all yourself. That way you can put the things out there that you find most appealing about the programs. Because remember, every program is going to tell you all the flowers and wonderful things about their program and why they're great. And you should go there just to get you to enroll in their financial aid fund. They are a business and they're trying to get as much money as they can possibly get, and that's what they're all about. You have to really research and decide what is the best thing for me. And just another, this kind of, I think, goes along the same lines of this, but when you're doing that, if you're going after a master's degree, they're pretty standard. If you're going to go get a doctoral degree, I would suggest earning a doctoral degree that allows you to earn your specialist degree en route to your doctoral degree. That way, if you finished all your coursework and you wound up all but dissertation, you still have a terminal degree in the end. You're not lacking that terminal degree because the EDS is a terminal degree. It's just lacking the dissertation.
Man, I'm telling you, truth bombs here and there. Like, it's just like we're on the same path. I love the fact that you had people, and I don't want to be big. I want to get my head off here. Okay, there we go. That you have people kind of listing what's for them, and you're absolutely right. It is a business. It is about kind of what the selling points are. So I love the fact that you pull out about if you don't complete, if you're ABD, which is all but dissertation, that you could still get a degree at the end. I think that is a very great call out, Chad, as always. So, and it looks like Seth actually has a list that he's kind enough to share. So thank you for that, Seth. Have three other questions that I hope we can hit really fast, and then we have to say goodbye. I could talk about this forever. This is good stuff. So Lisa's wanting to know what your thoughts are about a master's online for working people, and just kind of my 2 cents real quick, Lisa, if I may. If you don't know Roberta Dombrowski and Matt Sustana, I can make those introductions for you. They both did theirs at Boise State, and I've been very impressed, especially with Roberta's portfolio of everything that they did in that particular master's. So I would really encourage you to check out some of the stuff that they've done. And again, I'm happy to make that introduction for you because they're both really good people, both have really bright careers in the space, and really speak very highly of the programs that they were a part of. So that's one that I would recommend just by seeing what they've been able to do. Rick or Chad, do you have any thoughts on the online masters?
Yeah, I think if you're going in instructional design and you're planning on working with students in an online environment, you need to be an online student first. So it makes sense to get an online degree, traditional degree, especially if your bachelor's degree was a traditional degree. It doesn't make sense to get another traditional degree and another traditional degree. You need to have that opportunity to understand what a online student feels and thinks. I think if you should look at Purdue University. They have a wonderful program. University of West Florida has a really good program. Look at like you said, Boise. They have an excellent program. They're out there, and they're really good colleges that have really good programs. And if you're going to be teaching people how to use technology, you're going to be working online. It's going to look better if you went through an online program. Whenever you start talking to your prospective employers, and you can say, I understand from a student perspective what it's like to use a LMS. I understand what it's like to take a course online.
Yeah, I feel like I should have to start going first here because, Chad, you keep on stealing my thunder, my friend. I think that when you think about it, so being a student can be very complicated for a number of different reasons, but the environment of which you live in can be one of the most complicated places ever. What kind of software are they using? Is it really conducive to the online curriculum versus the blended versus the traditional? I've seen some programs, not at Arizona State, but I've seen some, not gonna name any names, but they've literally taken the the physical classroom, and they've dumped it into an online environment, and it doesn't transition well. Learning points are being missed. You don't have the kind of conversation, the kind of real-time interaction that you need, like you're physically in a classroom. So a lot of that is being lost, and you have to think, but my time and my finance are being invested in this. Why am I not getting what I want out of it? So I would have to say Arizona is really good. University of Maryland, another awesome one. Penn State, excellent for online, I feel, from what I've seen. And I think that when you think about it from a student's perspective, you have to think about the pros and the cons, I think, of the program as a whole, because they're not going to transition well to everybody.
Absolutely.
Also, I'll just interject real quick. Also,
Yeah,
think
go ahead.
about what your program is. What are you taking, and what degree in educational leadership? If you're going to be an instructional designer, it's not going to help you any way whatsoever. If you want to be a principal at a high school, great, go get that degree. But make sure your degree is focused in what you want to do. And to do that, you'll have to more than likely take a distance education course.
Yeah.
Good points. All right, wrap up really quick. Hopefully we can get through these in less than a minute total, I hope. So we have one from Ruth. I think she was interested in getting that first ID position, that everything that you see requires authoring tools. My pro tip for that would be, yes, a lot of times that first job asks for 1, authoring tools, and 2, experience. Best way to get help with both is I would reach out to your local ATD chapters or other organizations in the L&D space. Get to know people at those particular chapters. They can, 1, give you volunteer opportunities a lot of times, or 2, you can get mentorship from them that can help you get to the next space in your career. So that would be my tip. Rick, I'll let you go first since you said that Chad stole your thunder.
I think right with that, honestly, just doing like some real basic research of your own. I mean, generally from what I've seen, in terms of tools that's being out there, there's a few that are really well known: Rise 360, Storyline, Adapt, those kind of things. I think honestly, just try to go get like the trial versions of them and just play around with them. See some of the really cool things that people have discovered and made, I think, with this stuff online. A lot of organizations out there offer demos of their software, mine being one of those organizations. Talk to other individuals within the organizations that own stuff. So yeah, so ATD is gonna be a great place. Unfortunately, we don't meet that often as much as I wish as we did within the L&D community and environment. But I think just communicating with others in the field, just asking what they do well. Not trying to sell you anything, not trying to buy anything from you, but I am just curious about what everyone's using. And I think when you come in with that kind of mindset, it makes learning a little bit more organic, I think.
Great. Chad?
Yeah, work for free. Yeah, and do it fast and often as much as you can. Paid, then they start paying you. And that is the biggest thing I can say. Do it as soon as you possibly can. As soon as you decide I want to be an instructional designer, start working for free. Contact organizations that need learning, that don't necessarily have somebody to produce that learning, and start producing it for them. I would say the best organizations to do that with a lot of times is nonprofit organizations that are trying to make a difference in your community. A lot of times I need like door knockers and stuff like that. There's a lot of compliance involved around that, and you can build the learning for them so they don't have to do a in-person learning training every time. They'll love you for it because they will be able to reduce their staff, and you will make a huge difference in your community, and you'll get the experience you need, and eventually people will start paying you to do those things. But build a portfolio. If you don't have a portfolio, build one. It's very, very important. And also, if you don't want to go into higher education to be a researcher, probably don't need to get your ED, your Ph.D. Just go ahead and get your master's degree and call it done, or your specialist degree.
I agree with that now, Chad, but I'm too far into it. I'm going to finish it. And real quick, talking about the organizations, I want to give a shout out to LearnAppeal. They're actually an organization in England that has everybody create modules about different workforce development, soft skills topics, and they actually go on a Raspberry Pi, and those are taken to Africa, so people can access e-learning in Africa without having internet connection. So definitely check out LearnAppeal. Leslie Price is the lady that runs that. Very nice lady, and that's a great way to, 1, give back to the community, and 2, also build your technical acumen. So with that being said, last other thing, again, peeve of mine, I'm just going to put it out there, that if you are newer and you are looking for help in space, don't pay people for help. That's just my biggest pet peeve. There's people out there that will share time, talent, resources with you for free. You don't have to pay for it, and that's just the end of it. I'm going to stay on that. So with that, I've had great guests today, and again, we are at noon. So Rick, I'll start with you. Where can people find you if they want to connect with you, even though you hate social media?
Oh my goodness, yeah. So I'm currently in Boston, Massachusetts. For any of those local individuals, I'd be more than happy to have you buy me a cup of coffee or dinner. No, I'm just kidding. What you guys want to go ahead and do is I put 2 links down there in the chat. One for my organization, who I currently represent and who I work for. I am the account executive with them in our Boston office. And then my second link is for my only social networking site, which is going to be my LinkedIn. So please, feel free to go ahead and connect with me. My organization, we develop, we create, and we deploy custom L&D solutions with LMSs, LXPs, LRSs, those kind of things. So I'd be more than happy to chat with you and your business about those, or just to chat about random oddities of L&D. So I thank you guys so much for having me today.
Fantastic. Thank you. I'm going to close out your video, but you'll still be here in the chat if you want to share some parting words. And I will turn it over to Chad. Where can people find you?
Absolutely. First, I'd like to say thank you to everybody that participated and listened today. Thank you, Cara, for having me on. I really appreciate it. This community, like you said, is a wonderful community, and there's so many people out there that'll help you if you need anything at all. My website, I just put it up, www.chackras.com, chackras.com. It's won a ton of awards, all kinds of stuff, so you can get everything you need there. Have a wonderful day, and thank you guys so much.
All right, and apparently I'm a silly goose and I closed out everything. So thank you everybody who was part of today. We hope that you got something out of it. Please tell your friends about us. Join us on the next one. I think it's coming up in a couple of days with Andrew Hughes from Designing Digitally, talking with Procter & Gamble, sharing a little bit about a simulation that they created together. So with that, enjoy the rest of your Monday and keep learning. Bye.